this is Eric Moss, and I'm going to talk more about my experience with climbing elbow pain. For me, it's triceps tendonitis, and my last theory was that it was caused by rotator cuff weakness. Basically, that my elbow would lift up like this when I was climbing, and so then all the tendons would be loaded and unloaded in a kind of bad way, as opposed to this, where it's like everything's sort of in line and parallel. But like this, that's the danger zone. So a few people were asking me what are the best exercises to train this and get this back. And I've been working on it for a while, and I have a couple exercises. I'm going to try to give as comprehensive an answer as I can, because it's not simple. And so I'm going to go through those two exercises first, then some supplemental exercises that I've discovered to be necessary in addition to this, and then a new theory of a new injury vector that's kind of vexing me now that's related. So here we go. The first exercise is to take a band like this or like this, and loop it. I'll just pass it around some sort of stanchion so that it's like this, and maybe a Smith machine or whatever is not going to move on you. It doesn't have to be anchored vertically. It's actually, I prefer it if it can sort of just stay anchored parallel to where I'm pulling it, because then it's mostly just an outward pull, and that's what we're focusing on here. We're trying to get the chest in and stuff like that. So, and some of the supplemental exercises I'll show you later will use that same method. So, this exercise, imagine I have the band in my hands, but I'm going to be like this, and just do that. And you want to make sure that the band is not too strong, because you want resistance throughout this whole motion. You don't want it to just be at the end, although that's important. You want to be able to, you want it to be pretty fluid and smooth, but you want to aim for like 15 to 20 reps. So if it's a little too weak, you can just take a step back. If it's a little too strong, you can take a step forward. And if you find that it's like pulling your body too far forward, you can try it on your knees, and then that lowers your center of gravity, so you won't have to fight it as much. And that's part of the reason that we only do one at a time this way, is because if you try to do two at a time, you're really pulling your body in, and it also seems to, other muscles seem to take over. So it's good to do it one at a time like this. And so that's one exercise. The second one is like a side lay, external rotation with a dumbbell. Pretend this is a dumbbell. You want to keep your wrist straight when you're doing this, and you're going to be laying on your side on the ground and just raising it up to parallel. And the reason this is a good exercise, or what I think is the best version of it, I know you can do it with a band, like pulling out like this, but I just find it easier to isolate and easier to concentrate on that peak contraction at the end. One of the reasons that bands are so effective is because the peak contraction, the peak force will be at the peak contraction, wherever it's like where your muscle is fully engaged and contracted. That's where the most force will be. And this gets a similar effect, this side lay thing, because the biggest lever is at this moment. And so now what happened after I did these exercises for a while was that I noticed other muscle weaknesses in my back, in like the supporting musculature and whatever. So I just started to train the whole thing. It's not as bad as it sounds, though, because you can do a lot with this band wrapped around the stanchion. As I mentioned, you have it set up like that. It can go either way, not too strong, not too weak. You adjust it so that you have resistance throughout the whole move. And for a lot of these exercises, I like to use this thing and get the back of my hand in there so I can kind of get like some forearm extensor training. But it's not essential. And maybe the band is too strong. It's better to have a really good strength curve. And so one of those exercises is just imagine I have this on the stanchion now and I'm just doing these motions. Is the Y or like this. So you are doing this two arms at a time, and if it's pulling you too much, you can get on your knees and kind of isolate more. And then something like this. And I see a lot of people doing that exercise like this without a stanchion in front of them. They're just doing it free like this or whatever, And it's okay, but when you're out here, there's virtually no force because there's no lever. Here there's a lever. The widest lever is here, but out here it's pretty much in line. You're kind of just resisting it with your shoulders. It doesn't take anything to keep this out like that. So I really like it when it's held forward a bit from you, and then when you're pulling it back, you really feel it. Although it's not the same as that. I suppose you could do that, but I think this is kind of just as good. And then you do a pull down, straight arms, and you do a what do you call that? Tricep extension, and then what I call a climber face pull. So I put the strap on the back of my hands, or you can just hold it like that and do like a regular face pull sort of thing. Either one or both. And then a bat wing row, which is kind of an exaggerated row, and really pull your shoulder blades back. Now, through doing these exercises and nothing more really, just these and climbing, and I was always climbing to the extent that I could, but these allowed me to climb more and to also just hold my chest in more when I was climbing overhanging terrain. I felt like I was crawling upside down, and sometimes you just have to do that. Sometimes you have to strengthen it. So those are I won't go through my whole antagonist thing. There's a few other ideas I have, but I want to keep it brief. And then my final idea, this is something I've been thinking about, is pronator strength. So some people have been telling me work the extensors, and maybe that'll help. I haven't found it to be much help, but I think pronation, which is this motion, is important, because if I go to the wall here, I'm going to hold the hammer up and pronate, and then I'm going to hold the hammer up and supinate. So pronate feels okay. Supinate, it's kind of aggravating my elbow when I do that. So it's got me thinking, if I strengthen the pronation side a little more, then I'll get a little bit more favorable alignment to my forearm and stuff like that when I'm climbing. So, but here's the problem. They say for pronation, you train it like this, you put this on something, you do this. Again, we've got that strength curve issue. Peak contraction, there's no twisting force. There's no twisting force up here now. There's maximum twisting force here, but that's not a peak contraction. So, what I'm going to do is something like this, like here's the free end. So that you can see has maximum force of peak contraction. So, take it with a grain of salt. It's some food for thought. Any questions, comments? I appreciate it. See ya.